Welcome to the Steering Change Podcast, navigating through the commercial transportation industry in Alberta and beyond, powered by the Alberta Motor Transport Association. Here's your host, Kelsey Hipkin.
Greeting friends, and welcome to today's episode. In an industry where every kilometer counts, technology is reshaping how freight moves, in a lot of cases making operations smarter, safer, and more sustainable than ever before. During AMTA's 87th annual conference, April 8th to 10th, we had a session on carrier successes in new technology. Our speakers, Abraham Masri, Manager of Energy Transition and Sustainability with Trimac, Dave Schmidt, Western Canada RMX, Fleet and Training Manager, Lafarge Canada Inc., Jacob Adams, Director of Sustainability and Risk and Manager of Optimization, Aero Transportation Systems, and Terri Johnson, Manager Industry Advancement with AMTA, and their companies are trailblazers in redefining carrier successes in cutting-edge technology, because the future isn't just coming, it's already here. Our panelists were kind enough to rejoin us today to expand and share their thoughts even further on the future of industry. Abe, Dave, Terri, Jacob, hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us, you guys. To start, we're going to do a quick get to know you. Abraham, I'm going to begin with you. Please tell us a bit about yourself and your work with Trimac.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Abraham Masri. I worked in oil and gas industry in Calgary, having a geophysics background, and then pivoted to sustainability and energy with a master's in sustainable energy development. Joined Trimac after some time consulting and working in carbon markets as the manager of energy transition and sustainability. And since then, I've been heading up some of the pilots, the ESG report, and other initiatives related to that. So happy to be here.
So you're not busy at all.
No. Yeah.
All right, Dave, Mr. Schmidt, please tell us a bit about yourself and your work with Lafarge.
Sure. I've been working with Lafarge as a fleet and training manager since 2014. Before that, I was a driver, dispatcher, and worked my way into being a fleet manager and collision investigator, that type of thing. And happy to be here.
And side note, friends, Dave is also on the AMTA board of directors, so we have worked with him in a lot of capacities and really appreciate the work that you do, Dave. Jacob, can you tell us a bit about the work you do with Aero?
Yeah, you betcha. So first off, thanks for having me on the podcast. So I'm the Director of Sustainability and Optimization for Aero. It's kind of a long title and probably a job description that not a lot of trucking companies have. But essentially at Aero, we think that sustainability and optimization go hand in hand. So it's kind of why the job was created. So as a trucking company, in any trucking company, one of our biggest line items is obviously fuel. So when we can become more optimized with things like route optimization and backhauling, we're going to be inherently more sustainable. So, there's a really nice business case in the world of commercial transportation. Optimize your fleet. At the same time, there's a nice ESG story there. So I get to work kind of in both of those spaces. And I've been doing that since 2021. So it's been a lot of fun and definitely some exciting things on the horizon here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jacob. Terri Johnson, welcome back to Steering Change. Can you tell us about the work you do with AMTA?
Yep. So at AMTA, we've got our safety and our training and our advocacy programs. We work with the industry advancement, which is working more towards new technologies and technology advancement. So we're doing a lot of trials with different carriers and taking a look at evaluating technologies. I think what our niche is right now is that real world testing. We've really been able to do a lot in real world testing with new technologies, working with alternative fuels. We've worked with autonomous vehicles, and the future is going to hold a whole bunch of promise for these areas. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Terri. Once again, I appreciate you all taking the time. Let's talk industry and technology. Dave, I'm going to start with you. What is the importance of embracing technology in commercial transportation?
It's important that we embrace technology because we need to remain agile. We need to continually improve. And if we don't embrace technology, even at the very beginning, then we don't open up the door for us to be able to move the industry forward. So we may not start in the place that we're going to finish. We rarely do with any technology that you do work with. But if we stand back and don't embrace it, then we never move forward. We end up staying where we are, and that's not what we want to do. Ideally, the technology is going to lower our total cost of ownership, and it's going to increase our life cycle, lower our cost of doing business, but it costs money to get there.
That's some really good points there, Dave. And I really like the word agile that you used. If people kind of need to flow with as technology comes, because it's moving so fast, you kind of have to try and keep up along with it. Jacob, same question. What is the importance of embracing technology in commercial transportation?
I think, especially over the last, 5 to 10 years, there's been a huge uptick in technology offerings that support commercial transportation. So, I've been at Aero for almost 10 years now, and the amount of change within the industry with how much embracing of technology has happened is pretty remarkable. Like you think about, let's just go through some of the main ones, right? So safety, you have things like dash cams, but not just dash cams, things that are coaching drivers and providing feedback. Obviously, the shift to electronic log devices from paper logs was huge. Devices like eSmart for speed governance. So there's a lot of stuff related to safety. Maintenance, preventative maintenance, and especially some of the AI stuff we're seeing around being able to predict faults within the truck before they happen. And then for me, a lot of stuff around sustainability. So new technologies related to zero emissions or renewable diesel. So, without rambling on too much, there's thousands of, not thousands, but probably hundreds of new technologies out there that support a bunch of different things within the commercial transportation side. So if you're not at least looking at these things or embracing them within your fleet, you're slowly going to start falling behind your competitors.
Now, Jacob, I'm going to throw one at you here. When we go way back, um, first we have a vehicle with an engine. Sweet, we don't need horses anymore. Then we're getting things like seatbelts, windshield wipers. These are all new technologies that are helping vehicles, helping us on the road. But today we're seeing things moving so quickly, and you just mentioned there's thousands of things coming on board. How do you guys kind of keep up with what's important?
Yeah, honestly, that's such a good question because it's really daunting when you think about it. We're a large fleet, but a lot of the fleets that are out there, especially kind of in the areas we operate within Western Canada, they can be 5 trucks, 10 trucks, and they're trying to figure out, do we need to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars each year on, AI subscriptions to tell us how to run our business? And what I would tell people is, at the end of the day, start with your clear business goals. Don't start with, oh, we need to use technology. Figure out what is your biggest pain point. Is it fuel? Is it compliance? Is it turnover? And then start doing some research on, is there technologies out there that can help us with those pain points? If things are going well within your business and you're using a basic ELD device and a basic fleet tracking device and some Excel spreadsheets, I wouldn't necessarily overhaul everything and create some sort of crazy AI tracking company. Just figure out where are we having issues and is there a technology out there that might support us? I think that's the biggest thing. The second thing that I think is absolutely critical if you're going to get adoption is involving your staff at an early phase. If you're going to ask your drivers or your dispatchers or your mechanics to start embracing new technology, it's tough to kind of force it down their throat. So you want to bring them in at the early stage and say, okay, this is what we're thinking of. These are some of the problems we're seeing within our business. Here's some solutions we think might be helpful. But getting that early buy-in really helps with the successful adoption of the new technologies. So if I could tell, any fleet out there, early buy-in and get technology that helps you with your business goals. Don't just implement technology for the sake of doing it. Those are 2 things that have helped us a lot at Aero.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then kind of speaking to that, Abraham, how do you evaluate which emerging technologies are worth integrating into carrier services?
Yeah, we're all about pilots. We like to be involved as it does help in the development of the technologies. And for us, even if the technology is not ready to really deploy, we like to have that commercial testing that Terri mentioned. We like to find the right lanes and really get the right data. Trimac's really good at tracking a lot of different data regarding our trucks and fuel consumption and telematics data that we have, as well as engine performance. So we do like to have the right data to compare. What was this truck, for example, doing a year ago, 3 years ago, compared to today with aerodynamic add-ons or retrofits. In the case of a hydrogen fuel cell truck, we're hoping to get into commercial testing. We'll be working with the University of Alberta and collecting the data we normally collect from our telematics, and they've got a whole slew of other metrics and data that they're going to be tracking. So Yeah, it's all about having the right data, and then with some things, we want to compare, what are other trucks doing, in a similar application? What was that same unit doing a year ago, 2 years ago? And we want to just sort of see, how the numbers tell the story, and that determines whether we implement that technology or integrate it into our services.
And I'm going to stay with you for a sec, Abe. You just kind of pointed something out there. As the technology is moving, how is it going with the drivers adapting to these technologies?
It's a lot of learning, and something simple like, we don't want to overreact to technology, but with something simple like a wheel cover, it adds aerodynamics to the truck, reduces drag, and improves fuel economy. But we do pre and post trip inspections, so the drivers got to get in there. They got to see how, they got to look at the tire, look at all the bolts, and basically, simple things like that. It adds work. So there's constant training with co-combustion vehicles. Similarly, it doesn't sound like a big deal. You're going to have CNG or hydrogen burning with that diesel to displace some diesel, but they've got to stop, make a second stop, and fuel up that other fuel. So I've heard, sometimes that's challenging, and dispatchers and terminal managers, and it takes a lot of effort to train and to keep people doing the things they need to normally do. So although it seems simple on the surface, operationally it can be challenging.
Awesome. Thank you. And Dave, I'm going to ask you the same question, but a bit differently. So we're seeing a lot of green energy, alternative fuels, those sorts of things, but we're also seeing the technology of the trucks themselves, the nuts and bolts, if you will. How are drivers adapting to those kinds of changes?
They're adapting well, but it takes work. We need to make sure that we take the time to spend the time. But I think the majority of the work that it takes is getting them to understand why we're making these changes. We're just, as people, we're resistant to change. It's what we do. It's who we are, right? So if I'm doing the same job that I was doing yesterday, but now I'm being asked to do it differently, I need to understand why I'm being asked to do it differently. So if we just push these changes onto our drivers, we're not going to get the result that we're looking for. We need to make sure that they understand it so that they embrace this change, right? So I mean, this podcast is about steering change. So I think once we steer the change, now we have to push them to embrace the change, and we can't do that by keeping them in the dark.
Awesome analogy, Dave. Thank you. And as one who is quite resistant to change myself, it's nice to know that carriers are out there and supporting their drivers through these, right? And helping them to embrace that and have the proper training. Now, Jacob, how has the integration of new technologies impacted the efficiency of your operations, especially in areas like logistics, customer service, or route planning?
Yeah, so technology has helped us in a bunch of different ways. We're pretty fortunate at Aero that we have a division within the Aero group called Streamline Transportation that actually provides us a lot of our onboard kind of telematics
Oh,
options.
nice.
So being able to have, real-time fleet tracking, being able to integrate that with our customer load and unload sites provides us a lot of insight into, exactly, we're big into mining and fiber hauling and things like that. So if we can kind of integrate our technology with things like sawmills and mines and figure out when their shed's going to be full or when their bin's going to be full and when can we have that truck show up at the right time, anything we can do to kind of collaborate with our unload and load sites by using technology to kind of optimize our routes, at the end of the day, just makes things more efficient. And at Aero, like my biggest goal and kind of what gets me out of bed each morning is how do we make supply chains more efficient and more resilient? And that is all around optimization. And that's all around collaborating with your partners and finding solutions. Like, when a driver shows up on a site, can he scale in that load without having to get it out of the truck? Just preventing, 10,000 loads a day, not having to, or 10,000 loads a year, not having to get out of a truck. Maybe we prevent 2 slips and trips, and now you're a more safe organization. If a sawmill doesn't have to put a load of chips on the ground because you integrated your dispatch with their bin, are we able to save
Uh,
them $10,000 a year in fuel costs for a loader? So there's all these different ways that we can service our customers better and we can keep our employees safer if we're kind of embracing the technology that's at our fingertips.
It sounds like we need to have you back for a supply chain episode there, Jacob. So, Terri Johnson, you have worked closely with Dave, Abraham, and Jacob, as well as their carriers. What is the importance of collaborating with carriers on new technologies, especially with the work your team does here at AMTA?
Yeah, so the things that we've identified is that typically with testing of technologies, it's done in a lab simulation. So often they do all sorts of digital twins that will identify how this vehicle is operating and how it will be operate in a different situation. Other tests are done sometimes on track, so they'll take the vehicles to real world tracks. We did that in Blainville with our autonomous vehicles and with our ACE Tech vehicles before we brought them to the real world. Now, these track tests, again, are understanding how the technology is going to work in different situations, but it's not actually putting it through the pace of those real world tests. Seeing the autonomous vehicles run on a track, great fuel efficiencies, great different gains that you're getting with the vehicle. But as soon as you put them into the real world, you're interacting with traffic, and it changes the entire situation. So the test that we thought we did on track is skewed quite a bit when you work with real drivers interacting with real traffic. So right now, the trials that we've been doing, they're no longer that simulation or track test. It's a real world test with emerging technology in the environment that it's intended to perform within. So that's a big thing, is putting it in the operational environment, which includes what Dave and Abraham are talking. So we've got our pilots that are including drivers. So we're understanding how the drivers react to the technology. We're understanding additional training that they need. We're understanding different pre and post trip schedules and how that's going to change with this new technology. We're even taking a look at scheduling and how it's going to work into their scheduling and their pay, which is very important for a driver. If you're telling them that they get to drive the new truck, but they have to take a 20% pay hit to that, they're not going to be very interested in driving that new truck. So what does that mean for the driver? What does that mean for the organization? How are they going to adapt their current business operations to encourage drivers? It also takes a look at mechanics and what kind of training mechanic needs, what kind of new tooling is needed for an organization, logistics, dispatching, the management concerns. So Dave had indicated before that they're looking for those operational efficiencies. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the operational efficiencies, the safety, the environmental concerns, but then also being able to take a look at the carrier and do some kind of a business case. And can they actually use money? They make money using this technology, or at what point in time can they use the technology and make money for it? What are the return on investments for that technology? So those are some of the things we're working with.
Awesome. And I mean, obviously, we have Trimac, Aero, and Lafarge represented today. How has engagement and uptake been with carriers?
Right now, we're not doing the commercialization portion of technologies typically. We're typically looking at the pilots. So we're trialing them with organizations. And we are providing data for organizations to make their business-driven decisions. So commercialization is the next step that comes after a trial.
Awesome. Thank you, Terri. Now, a question for the four of you. I'm going to start with you, Abraham. What do you see for the future of industry?
I'll take out my crystal ball. Yeah, it's a tough one because there's so many competing technologies out there. Just to name a few, for the zero emission vehicle side of things, you've got hydrogen fuel cell, you've got battery electric, and now we're seeing some movement on the internal combustion of either CNG or hydrogen and even CNG engines that are starting to compete with diesel in terms of performance. So there's a lot out there. There's no clear winner. And so from the different duty cycles and use cases and environments, I think it's not going to be a one size fits all, whatever it turns out to be. So in some cases, you may have a shorter route with the right charging infrastructure, and a battery electric may work in that application. In other cases, you may have a longer lane, a longer route, and you may need to have a hydrogen fuel cell truck when the technology is ready. And in some cases, for a broader swath of what's out there, perhaps co-combustion will emerge as the winner. So it's really going to depend on the location, what infrastructure is in place, and the different factors that will contribute to the success of one technology over another in that area.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Dave, what do you see for the future of industry?
I see kind of a blend. I see a blend in technologies. Some technologies are going to have a high cost up front, but a lower cost moving forward, such as zero emission vehicles and what the right technology is. But other technologies are going to help that cost. So our streets are getting narrower. Our distribution is getting a little bit more difficult. So it's costing more money to get whatever it is we're moving to where it needs to go. But there are certain things, and I'm going to throw this out there because it's a pretty big win for us and the AMTA. We're using trailers now that we've worked with the government, Tech in Alberta. We've worked with them in order to get trailers with steer axles. That's going to lower our cost. It's going to lower the effect on the infrastructure for Tech, and it's a win. But along with that win, now zero emission vehicles with a higher cost and higher weights, so I think technology is going to play a very large part in what we do going forward, much larger than it ever has before. But I think as long as we maintain our relationships with the government and with the industry and the associations, I think we can definitely win going forward.
Absolutely. Great answer, Dave. And for any of our listeners who might be coming to us from outside of Alberta, the tech that Dave referred to is Transportation and Economic Corridors. That's our provincial transportation branch. And Jacob, same question to you. What do you see for the future of industry?
Yeah, I mean, there's two things that I see. The first one is potentially a little bit scary, and that's, and you're seeing this a little bit in America, is consolidation. Because of the embrace of technology, you're having like the Walmarts and the Amazons and the Home Depots of the world. They kind of have an expectation of their carriers that they're now using this technology and they're integrated with their systems. And what that does is pushes out a little bit the mom and pop trucking companies. And I think that's scary overall. And it's a long-term trend that I'm a little bit nervous about. Same thing with things like zero emission vehicles. How many small trucking companies have the ability to pilot hydrogen fuel cell technology or battery electric technology? And if it doesn't work great, what position are they in? You don't have millions of dollars to try this stuff out. And if it fails, that's the business kind of thing. So I do worry that technology could push consolidation in the industry, which is not great for the smaller players. So that's my one concern kind of with technology. My one, I would say, on the other side of things, the positive piece is it's going to create a safer industry, a more optimized industry, a more sustainable industry, and a more resilient industry. So if we have the embrace of technology, and that is making our roads safer, because we know exactly what's going on, we know exactly how fast trucks are going, we know that there's wear on tires that's unacceptable, or there's brakes that need to be replaced. All the little things that you see out in the road that kind of cause you concerns. I'm hoping that there is a future where technology can slowly but surely kind of clean those things up. Same thing on the emissions side. Over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a transition to, dual fuel technologies and natural gas trucks and renewable diesel products. And then maybe 15 to 20 years from now, we'll start seeing some zero emission vehicles on the road as well. So some really exciting kind of things developing in that area as well.
Yeah, I appreciate where you went with that. Just making sure that, like you mentioned, that those smaller carriers don't necessarily get left behind, and they have the knowledge and the tools to kind of to keep up with everyone else as time goes on.
I think it's important too that big customers that are hiring carriers help those carriers meet their goals. So if you're a massive company and you're hiring out 5,000 trucks from 1,000 different carriers that each have 5 trucks, and you're saying, we have an emissions goal that we want to reduce our supply chain emissions by X. I think as that bigger company, it's your responsibility to help your small haulers get there. Whether that's financially supporting them, whether that's building the charging or the refueling infrastructure at your sites, whether it's creating efficient loading and unloading windows, anything you can do to help those small carriers kind of take the next leap, I think is not just important, but I think it's almost mandatory for those big companies at the end of the day.
Amazing. Thank you, Jacob. So, Terri, same question. What do you see for the future of commercial transportation?
So you see a lot of different sessions and seminars. When you take a look at it 30 years and what 30 years can do, we can go from a horse and buggy to a gasoline powered vehicle. I think over the next 30 years, transportation is poised for transformational change. I think the industry is going to change drastically. There's the Internet of Things, vehicle-to-vehicle communications. The fleets of the future are going to look very different than the fleets that we are operating today. They will be safer. They will have different operational efficiencies, and they will be more environmentally conscious. So I think those are all things that we're going to be looking at in the future. And I think that with technology moving at such a fast pace, I don't think they're going to be flying semis. But I think that what we know today is going to be very different for industry. So excited to see what these changes are going to bring forth. Excited to do the pilots and the testing. Excited to help develop those ecosystems with the carriers and our carrier members. And excited to see what they think is going to work, where the needs are, and how we can advance transportation together.
Awesome. Thank you, Terri. Now, I just want to thank all of you so much for your knowledge and insight today. I had the opportunity to hang out in person with you leading up to and during our conference, and just the minds and the way your guys' minds work and the insights you have on industry and technology is awesome. So I really do appreciate you being here today. I'm going to let us wrap up with some parting thoughts. Terri, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think that working together with our carrier members is a huge opportunity, and it's been a huge blessing to AMTA to understand what the needs are for industry and how we can support those changes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Terri. And Dave, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, really, I'd just like to say thank you very much. As a carrier, it's very easy to feel like you're alone, and you're the only one that's going through this. So thank you very much for the support of the AMTA, the support of tech, and the support of the other carriers. It's been a great experience so far, and I look forward to continuing.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. And yeah, absolutely. It's amazing what we can achieve when we all work together. Now, Abraham, anything from yourself?
Yeah, I would echo Dave's gratitude for the collaboration and openness in the industry. And I think I've had conversations with other carriers, and talking to the folks at AMTA, just the support. It feels good to be a part of a broader community that's all sort of working to do the right thing and also advance things in the best way for everyone. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Abraham. And lastly, Jacob, anything you'd like to add?
I said I already talk a lot, so there's not too much more I can really add. But obviously, thanks so much for having me on. It's always great to partake with the AMTA, whether it's been our hydrogen fuel cell pilot project or coming out to the conference there last month. So just a big thank you to you and your entire team for the work you're doing in this space.
Thank you again to the four of you. I know I've said it a few times now, but we really do appreciate, and I sound like a broken record when I say that, but it's so important that you guys are willing to take the time and share your insights on the Steering Change podcast. Now, some AMTA news to close us up. AMTA's 75th Professional Truck Driving Championship takes place May 31st in Edmonton. If you're listening today on May 23rd, this is your last day to register as a driver or volunteer. If we've passed May 23rd, unfortunately, you've missed out, but we look forward to seeing you next year. Full details can be found by reaching out to events@amta.ca or visiting amta.ca. AMTA's latest campaign, Spring into Safety, looks at the transition from winter to spring and how that can affect how we drive, prepare to drive, and how we interact with other road users. Stay tuned for our June 6th episode where we explore the further impacts of wildlife strikes, sharing the road with motorcycles, and spring cleanup. Do you have any questions or comments about the Steering Change episodes? Reach out on our Instagram at AMTA_CA or LinkedIn and Facebook at Alberta Motor Transport Association. Stay safe and see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of AMTA's Steering Change podcast. The views expressed by guests of the Steering Change podcast are their own and may not reflect the views of AMTA, its hosts, or sponsors. Did you have a question that you would like answered on an upcoming episode of the Steering Change podcast? We want to hear from you. To submit a question to the Steering Change mailbag, hit up our DMs on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram with the hashtag Steering Change, and your question will be answered either live on the podcast or by one of our SMEs here at AMTA. We ask that you share this episode with those in your network that could benefit from what we discussed today, and make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you can be notified when future episodes are released. You can learn more about us and our mission by visiting www.amta.ca. Now get out there and have a safe day.